for God to give us a mighty revival. He's not going to give us anything on top of what's already wrong until we repent, until we understand what all of these things are. And let me say now, a lot of the struggles going on, even with our government, struggles with money, struggles in Asia, struggles all over the world. You know, I know I'm not supposed to be very detailed here, but, you know, the peace talks, the things that we're talking about in the world today that are great climatic things that are just shaking. Everything is just in a turmoil. Does that have anything with the coming of a new millennium? Sure, it certainly does. But that's only a manifestation of a dimension that God is trying to bring us into. It's not the time. We're not waiting for the times to mature. We're waiting for the church to mature.
Yeah.
That whole thing is the groaning and travailing. The whole creation groans and travails, and all it's groaning for is it's looking for the manifestation
of the sons of God,
of that real church out of the church. God is going to bring up his real, the one he's building, out of all the stuff we've built. And I'm not sure we even know what it's going to look like. I'm not sure if we saw it, we'd recognize it, because we're so accustomed to seeing the prototype of all the things we've borrowed. You know, we borrow eyes, ears, and all these things, put it all together and say, ooh, God gave me a vision. No, that's cut and paste, and when you finally get through, it's a graven image. It's really not a vision. I borrowed pieces from here and there, put it together, say, this sounds good, that worked over there, let's try that. Hey, this sounds like that's a good idea. Have you ever done that? Let's try that. Preachers get together, paste these things all up. When they get them all through, they say, okay, now we're going to start a church, and here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And the truth is that God never told him to do that in the first place. God never told David, I want you to build me a house. He never told him that. But David, he wanted to do it, so he jumped up to do it.
You know, there's a lot of things that you are dealing with, and of course now I'm, you know, I got enemies too, so I might as well make more.
But I got friends. You got friends.
But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of things that are going on. You know, there's a lot of, you know, user-friendly churches and all this kind of stuff, and marketing guys going out and they're building churches by knocking on doors in the community and finding out what the people want. And you know, I don't think Jesus ever told us to find out what the people want. I think he told us what to preach and what to give. And we have developed an entire industry around the production of a church. And in the final analysis, it's when we start messing with that kind of stuff that we really have problems. There is, in my estimation, there is something that is going on in the rumblings. And when you said we do not know what this church will look like, I'll tell you one of the things that the Spirit of the Lord said to me very clearly. He said, we will be able to identify one another. In other words, when I meet one,
you know him.
I'll know him.
That's right.
When I come in contact with one, I'll know them. They will be across denominational lines. They'll be across ethnic lines. They'll be across national and international lines. But when we come in relationship with one another, it will resonate. And I'm finding as I travel and as I preach, and I'm finding that God is raising these men and women.
That's right.
They're out there. And again, I need to say something very quick, because you hit on something a few minutes ago, and you were talking about, you know, we think that we've arrived, we think we've done this and done this when we get to a certain level. The fact of the matter is, just like you were talking about with Solomon, the men and the women of God, perhaps even in this hour that God is using, are not there because they've arrived. They're there because they're in the right dimension. They're at the right place.
And they may be lesser, and they may be lesser characters,
of course,
than some other people who are pristine and don't have a pimple on them. You know, and that's the first attack religion does, is it goes back and says, yeah, well, he might be a great preacher, but you know what happened to him 15 years ago? You know what he went through? And the whole issue is, as you said earlier in the program tonight, is that a priest taken from among men to be made a high priest over men, Hebrews 5, must offer sacrifice for himself as for the people. Yeah, he must have compassion on the ignorant, them that are out of the way, in that he himself has been compassed by infirmity. He's been totally surrounded by unstable situations and circumstances, and he survived. We throw the people away. You know, we would have saved Saul and killed David. We save our Saul because David's sin was a sin of the flesh. Saul's sin was a sin of the spirit. God killed Saul and gave David a Messiah. We've done the other because we are so earthy minded.
Yeah.
That the sins of the flesh or the problems that we go, not just sins, but the problems men and women go through, the struggles, like the problem David Martin was talking about right here on this couch, going through in his life. And some of us have gone through horrendous things. It is religion's best tool to sit back and say, yeah, but.
Right.
Well, that's fine, because it's not going to matter anymore.
Absolutely.
Because God is evening the scale on all of that. And the weight of authority and power and gifting that comes only from God and not by men.
Yes.
Man can hand you a scepter. But if he hands you the scepter, he can take your crown. But if God ever says you are who you are, it doesn't matter what other men say you are or are not.
Right.
And God is getting ready to raise.
And that is why relationship with God is so important, because it is only there where we really know who we are. What you say I am, what men say I am, what this one says, what that, you're this, you're this, you're this, that doesn't matter. It's what God says you are.
Yeah.
And you won't hear that without relationship. You're about to say something.
I want to go back and say that if you ask most any pastor, preacher, minister, bishop, whatever, today, or Christian, you know, our friends, all of our church people, if you ask them, what is your vision? What is your purpose in the kingdom of God? They'll say, man, we're going to reach our city. Oh, listen, God, we're going to take this valley for God. They're going to say, well, you know, we want our church to grow. I mean, these are the things that you get responsive. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay, if I say, what is your vision? Everybody's going to say, well, listen, you know, I want to become a man of God, a woman of God. I want to preach. I want to win people to God. I want to win the lost. So what we have done is we have made our target, we have made our goal reaching the world, turning the world upside down, doing all of these powerful things out here, okay? That's our goal. The problem is not in what we want to do. God wanted a house. He just didn't want David to build it. The problem is not that we don't need the world one. The problem is we think we know how to do it. And so we go borrow from world systems ideas on marketing. We borrow ideas on how to talk to people, how to win friends and influence people and all of that. We try to take all of these worldly things, and so we feel that if we can then, since we know what the goal is, the purpose is, now we've got to work and do all these things to get to it.
Yeah.
When I was a kid on the farm, I was given a bow and some arrows when I was a kid. And I didn't know anything about shooting a bow. I went all over the place. Man, I'm telling you, squirrels and rabbits were safe. Nothing was in danger. Nothing, you know, because I couldn't hit anything. And I learned some things. You know, there was a place on the bow where the arrow lay, a rest. So it was there every time, just like that. When I'd pull it back, I could point at something here, and I'd get the point exactly right on that, and I'd shoot, and it'd go, boom, way up there. I'd pull it back. Next time, put the point on exactly the same place, and boom, it'd go down there. What I didn't realize was that there was an anchor point. There was a foundational point back here on this string, that this projectile, it doesn't matter. That point rarely moves out there. It's going to stay there. Even if this comes down, that you can still put the point on the target, but you're going to hit way up there. The point still stays basically, so you raise it up to the point. But see, because this thing is varying back here, this is what the church has lost. It's lost its anchor point, so that there is no alignment between the back foundations and what we're pointing at. Yeah. We want to reach the world, but we're shooting up here and hitting down here because we don't know how to reach the world. We think that we need to go and preach. We need to get on television. We need to do all these things. I really think that the greatest power for television is to reach the... I used to think that was not true. I went off television years ago because I was tired of preaching to Christians. I wanted to reach sinners. Right. Now I think the most powerful tool is reaching the Christian today. If we could reach the Christians, we could reach the world.
Exhorting one another daily.
I've got to come to this point. This is really important. I've got to get to this. If we don't come into proper church government and order, if we don't come into order in our lives, if we try to duplicate what has been done in the past, we are never going to see the coming up of that glorious thing. Yeah. There's got to be a travailing, a birthing, a crying out, a hunger after God. Now, that, in my opinion, is the veil. Okay? If we take these three dimensions again, seems like we're jumping here a little bit, but if we take these three dimensions again, if I go from the outer court to the holy place, if I'm going into the holiest of holies, I've got to go through a veil.